The storm outside matched the storm inside her heart. Rain pounded against the glass walls of the penthouse as Isabella sat alone, her trembling hands resting on her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, abandoned, and blindsided by the man she thought would love her forever, she stared into the city lights below. Just hours earlier, Michael, her husband, the self-made millionaire everyone envied, had stood before her with cold detachment in his eyes and announced that their marriage was over. He had fallen in love with another woman, a yoga teacher who, in his words, brought him peace. Isabella's world shattered in that moment. The vows they had exchanged, the life they had built, and the child they had dreamed of, all discarded as if they meant nothing. Friends and family had warned her that Michael was a man addicted to newness, always chasing the next thrill, the next woman, the next deal. But Isabella had defended him fiercely, believing in the love they shared. Now she was left with nothing but the echo of his footsteps leaving their home forever. Alone, broken, pregnant. Before we dive deeper into Isabella's journey, a story of betrayal, resilience, and the most unexpected twist of fate, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of true love, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support helps us bring more life-changing stories like this to the world. The days after Michael left were suffocating. Isabella had once been surrounded by luxury, chauffeurs, fine dining, endless parties, but now, none of it mattered. She would sit on the edge of her bed at night, clutching her belly, whispering to the baby inside that they would be okay. She had to be strong, even as the tabloids splashed headlines about Michael's new romance with his yoga instructor, a younger woman who posted sunlit photos of their spiritual journey together. Isabella endured the humiliation of strangers, pitying looks, the whispers at high-end boutiques, the judgment that she wasn't enough to keep her husband's attention. But what no one knew was that Isabella carried a secret of her own, one she had hidden her entire adult life. She had walked away from immense privilege years ago, choosing to build her own path without the shadow of her family name. For Isabella was not just another millionaire's wife, she was the only daughter of the Moretti family, the powerful heirs to one of the largest private airline dynasties in Europe. Born into unimaginable wealth, she had grown tired of the artificial world of privilege. She had yearned to be seen for who she was, not for her last name. That was why she never revealed her lineage to Michael. She wanted a love that was pure, one not tainted by inheritance or influence. Ironically, the man she trusted betrayed her while she remained unaware of the irony, that in the end, she was worth far more than he could ever dream. The months of loneliness hardened her resolve. She moved out of the penthouse, choosing instead a quiet estate she had purchased years earlier under a different name. It was there that Isabella began to heal. She learned to rely on herself, taking slow walks through the garden, journaling her emotions, and surrounding herself with loyal staff who respected her privacy. She discovered strength in vulnerability and beauty in solitude. Each day, as she watched her belly grow, she promised herself she would give her child a life filled with love and authenticity, not one poisoned by deceit and shallow ambition. When the baby arrived, a little girl with her mother's eyes and gentle smile, Isabella felt whole again. Holding her daughter in her arms, she realized that Michael's betrayal had given her something far greater, the freedom to rewrite her story. She poured her soul into motherhood, and with each passing day, the grief transformed into determination. Slowly, whispers of her true identity began to surface. Business executives recognized her when she discreetly attended aviation charity events. Old friends from her childhood tried to reconnect. Isabella resisted at first, reluctant to step back into that world. But fate had other plans. When the Moretti family faced a crisis in their airline empire, threats of hostile takeovers, crumbling trust, and global competition, Isabella was asked to return. They needed her vision, her heart, and her ability to bridge old traditions with modern innovation. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she could balance motherhood with such responsibility. But as she looked at her daughter one evening, she realized she was no longer just fighting for herself, she was building a future for her child. Meanwhile, Michael's world began to collapse. The yoga teacher who had promised him serenity and love grew restless when the money dried up. Michael, reckless with his investments, had gambled away much of his fortune. The glamorous life he once flaunted faded into debt, lawsuits, and scandal. He watched from afar as Isabella's star rose higher than ever. Headlines no longer spoke of him but of her, the mysterious heiress who had stepped into leadership of an airline dynasty and transformed it with grace and brilliance. The final blow came when Michael, desperate and humbled, reached out to Isabella. He stood outside her corporate office, disheveled and broken, begging for forgiveness. He pleaded to see his daughter, to be part of their lives again. Isabella listened quietly, her expression calm but resolute. She no longer needed his validation, no longer longed for the man who had discarded her when she was at her most vulnerable. With strength and dignity, she told him the truth, that their daughter would always know who he was, but she would not allow betrayal and selfishness to poison the little girl's life. And as Michael walked away, the irony hung heavy in the air. He had left Isabella for a yoga teacher, thinking he had found someone better. But the woman he abandoned had been worth more than he could ever comprehend, not because of her fortune, not because of her name, but because of the quiet, unshakable strength she carried within her. Isabella stood tall, not as someone's ex-wife, but as a woman who rebuilt herself from ashes, a mother who loved fiercely, and a leader who honored her family's legacy with integrity. Her story became an inspiration, one whispered among women who had been betrayed, one admired by men who had underestimated the quiet power of resilience. Isabella proved that sometimes heartbreak isn't the end. Sometimes, it is the very beginning of the life we were meant to live. If Isabella's journey touched your heart, if you believe in the strength of women and the power of second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Every click helps us spread more stories of resilience, love, and transformation to the world. Special request to comment: what would you have done if you were in Isabella's place? Would you have taken Michael back, or walked away forever? We'd love to hear your thoughts below. Night it happened, the world outside Isabella's penthouse was drenched in rain. Storm clouds hung low over the glittering skyline, and lightning cracked across the heavens like a cruel punctuation to her breaking heart. Inside the glass-walled living room, Isabella sat motionless on the edge of a white leather sofa, her hand instinctively pressed against the swell of her 8-month pregnant belly. Her life had been shattered with a few cold words. Michael, her husband, the man she had once thought was her forever, stood before her with his tie loosened, his expression detached, almost businesslike. "It's over, Isabella. I can't do this anymore. I've found someone else. She gives me peace, she understands me in a way you never could." The thunder outside roared, but not louder than the silence that followed his words. Isabella stared at him, her lips parting as if to plead, but no sound came. She had given up her youth for him, given her trust, her love, and now, her body carried their child. And yet, he stood before her, tossing away their vows as if they were nothing more than a broken contract. He didn't look back when he left. His footsteps echoed down the marble hallway, the heavy door slammed, and she was left alone with the sound of the storm and the quiet rhythm of her baby's heartbeat inside her. She whispered into the emptiness, tears rolling down her cheeks, "We'll be okay, my little one, somehow, we'll be okay." Before we dive deeper into Isabella's journey, a story of betrayal, resilience, and the most unexpected twist of fate, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of true love, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support helps us bring more life-changing stories like this to the world. The days that followed were suffocating. Isabella woke up to headlines she never imagined she'd see. Millionaire tech mogul Michael Carter seen with yoga teacher in Bali. Photos splashed across glossy magazines and gossip sites showed Michael, her husband, smiling in the arms of a younger woman dressed in white linen, her hair twisted into a casual bun, her face radiant with the ease of someone who had won. Isabella, meanwhile, sat at home, swollen with child, abandoned and humiliated. Friends who once filled her social calendar disappeared. Invitations to events stopped coming. She became the whispered tragedy of the city's elite, proof that even the most glamorous life could crumble in an instant. The loneliness of pregnancy weighed on her. Each doctor's appointment she attended alone was a reminder of his absence. Each kick inside her belly filled her with both joy and grief, for she longed to share those moments with him, the man she thought she had married. Instead, she sat in her car afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, crying silently until her tears ran dry. And yet, beneath her pain, Isabella carried a secret. One that not even Michael knew. She was not the ordinary woman he thought he had married. She had hidden her identity for years, longing for love untainted by wealth and power. Isabella was born Isabella Moretti, the only daughter of the Moretti family, owners of Moretti Airlines, one of the largest private airline empires in Europe. Her childhood was lived in palaces, her vacations on private islands, her education at the world's most prestigious schools. But Isabella had hated it. She had hated the way people treated her as a name, not a person. She had hated the way men pursued her not for her heart but for her inheritance. So at 21, she walked away. She created a new life under a different name, determined to build her own path and find love without the shadow of her family's fortune. Michael had been her chance at that. When she met him, he was ambitious but not yet wealthy. He had swept her off her feet with charm, with promises of forever. She thought she had finally found someone who saw her, not her last name, not her money. How cruelly wrong she had been. Now, as the months dragged on, Isabella learned to survive without him. She moved out of the cold penthouse that felt haunted by betrayal and into a quiet countryside estate she had bought years earlier under an alias. There, away from paparazzi and society's gaze, she tried to heal. She walked through her gardens in the mornings, her belly growing heavier with each step. She journaled her emotions at night, writing letters to her unborn child. She surrounded herself with a small staff who treated her not as a fallen wife, but as a woman deserving of respect. The night her daughter was born, Isabella wept tears of both pain and gratitude. Holding the tiny bundle against her chest, she whispered, "You are my whole world now. I promise, you will never feel abandoned. You will never feel unloved." She named her little girl Sophia, after her grandmother, a woman of great strength and grace. Motherhood gave Isabella purpose again. Her days filled with lullabies and midnight feedings, with tiny hands gripping her fingers and eyes that mirrored her own. The love she had once given to Michael was now poured into her child. Slowly, she began to rebuild, not just her life, but her spirit. But fate is rarely finished when it seems the story is over.